Good evening. Welcome to the Essex County Ornithological Club meeting and speaker series. I'm Constance Lepeat, president of the ECOC. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight, we hope to help you take the edge off of that cooped up feeling that's probably been building, what with the darkness and the weather tomorrow, and of course, this pandemic. Lifelong birder and photographer Jared Keyes tonight will help us escape to a birding hotspot in Southeast Arizona. So grab your sun hat and grab your sunscreen, and we will join him on our escape right after a quick ECOC meeting. First, some housekeeping for everyone. If you're having technical difficulties, please know that we are very fortunate to be supported by Mark Wood from the Peabody Essex Museum. If you're having trouble and you can hear me, you can go ahead and email Mark at mark_wood@pem.org, and hopefully he can help you out. Now, I've been promising all of you that we can make this feel a little bit more clubby by getting everyone involved, and tonight we're hoping to make that happen. For the two segments of the meeting, announcements and bird sightings, we are going to unmute you all, and please feel free to speak up if you've got an announcement or you've seen some excellent birds. Go right ahead, speak up, and hopefully we'll make it feel more like a meeting. If you have questions for the speaker tonight, that'll be a little bit different. Janie and Jared will go over the details on that. I will say that there's a question box and there's a chat box, and I know you guys are really chatty. So if you have questions, don't use the chat box. We might miss it, but more on that later. So announcements, moment of seriousness. We have an important task for all of you club members coming up. Yes, you have to vote. I bet you've heard that already this year. But the ECOC council members, we serve on an annual basis. And we are going to be posting the slate on the website soon. So check out the website. And I don't know why there's a dog on the screen, but there's a dog on my screen.
I can hear you.
Maybe there's a dog on your screen.
How weird.
Anyway, during members night on January 8th, we will ask you to vote on the slate, and we'll present it again then. So I can tell you that the slate of candidates is only going to have one change, which is that our current treasurer, Buffy Pennick, will be stepping down. Fortunately, the search committee looked far and wide, and Mary Stevens, who some of us remember as Ben's mom, Mary Stevens thankfully has stepped up and accepted the nomination, so she'll be placed on the slate as treasurer. So again, members night, that's January 8th, will be online again. It'll be at 7:30. So a little bit more about members night. It's going to be kind of a talent show of sorts. Along those lines, if you have a bird photo that you want to share, we'd really love to see it and put it on the screen during members night. If you want to share, please send it to Janie Winchell. You can find her email on the ECOC website, janie_winchell@pem.org. Another announcement I just learned today, and maybe other people know this, but there is IRS has a special new provision that'll allow you to donate up to $300 this year and get that deducted off of your 2020 taxes, even if you don't itemize. So that's kind of good news. The donations do have to be cash or check, basically money. Birds need your help, and land needs conserving. And I know for a lot of people, this has been a tough time. But if you can afford to give, please think about it. And other news for you competitive types, Mass Audubon Joppa Flats Sanctuary has announced that the Super Bowl of birding will go on. Despite the pandemic, it's going to be the semi-Super Bowl. There'll be some rule changes. But that's on January 30th. You can find details on their website. And for us not so competitive types, it's a fun day to kind of sit back and watch other people run around crazy while you chill out and look at the Harlequin ducks. And be careful driving around these people. Does anyone out there have any announcements?
Feel free to raise your hand or unmute your microphone. You should all have access to do that.
Okay, you guys are being shy. All right, well, I will add a reminder about the Christmas bird count for Cape Ann, which is coming up on Sunday, December 20th. The count off will be held on Monday via Zoom. So a little bit of change because of the pandemic. Robert Buxbaum is the count coordinator, and please consider signing up. You can reach him at rnbuxbaum@gmail.com. And that's it for announcements. So I'd like to hand it over to our treasurer, Buffy, for our treasurer's report.
Constance, we have one question.
Yeah. Oh, I see Robert Buxbaum has raised his hand.
Robert, I just sent you an unmute, so go ahead if you want to accept that.
Oh, well, Constance, you already made the announcement, so it's fine. That's all I was going to do. So,
okay, Robert, you know what, though? Can you tell everyone the date of the Newbury Port Christmas bird count?
Well, Newbury Port is the week after, so it's the 27th. The difference is that one is closed. So you need to hook up with a team and get taken in, but Cape Ann is still open, meaning we take all comers or try to find places for them. And I have been getting emails from people, two people who are new to the area saying, who just saw my name on the Cape Ann Crown on the National Audubon website and said they wanted to take part. So it is a good way to introduce people to birds, and particularly newcomers to the area. So that's good. So if you have an inclination, just let me know and I can hopefully place you somewhere.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Robert.
And Constance, we have Donna Cooper as well, has a question or an announcement.
Go ahead, Donna.
Hi, Constance. I just wanted to tell people that the Andover Christmas bird count is on December 19th, and we have lots of room for people who want to do feeder watches. If you're in the Andover circle, people can reach out to me if they'd like to.
Great. And what was that date again, Donna?
December 19th.
All right. Thank you so much. Anybody else out there have a hand raised, Mark?
That is it, but when we get to the end as well, make sure if you have any questions at the end, make sure you just click that raise hand button and we'll call on you just like we did now.
Great.
Constance,
Yes.
Sissy asks about, what about feeder counts?
I don't know. Can we, Robert, would you mind speaking to that? I'm not familiar with the rules for feeder counts.
Yeah, I'm not that, I'm still relatively new at this, but I think that you get there, each of the, in the Cape Ann count, there are 10 sectors and each sector has a sector leader. So if you're interested in doing a feeder count, like get a hold of me and I'll put you in touch with this person whose sector you're in. But that certainly is a way to participate. It's in a separate category.
Actually, I can.
Oh, good, Tom, you can.
Yeah, I can take that question too. So feeder counts are, as usual, welcomed. Probably more people will be doing them this year for obvious reasons. And those results can either, as Robert said, be reported to a sector leader or directly to the compiler, either Robert in the case of Cape Ann or me in the case of Newburyport. So if you would like to do a feeder count and you're somewhere in the Newburyport count circle, which is Ipswich, Raleigh, Newbury, Newburyport, West Newbury, also part of Boxford, let me know. You can either send me a chat on here or, email me. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Sissy, for bringing up that low impact option for contributing to Christmas bird counts.
Donna, do you have anything else to add? You have your hand raised.
I was just going to say it's the same thing for the Andover circle. We include Andover, North Andover, Methuen, Wilmington, some of Tewksbury, Reading, and North Reading. And I am the circle leader, compiler, so people can reach out to me and you can find probably my information from Constance.
Or feel free, Donna, to put the info in the chat.
Okay, gotcha.
Great. I can't tell you how nice it is to have your voices out there. I can't see your faces, but it's really nice to hear from you all. So thank you. If there aren't any more announcements, I'd like to move on to the
You want me to
treasurer.
go?
Oh, sorry, Mark. Oh, let's move on to the treasurer's report then.
Hey, Constance, thanks. Sorry.
Hi,
I'm here.
Buffy.
Oops. Okay. You'd think I never did Zoom before. Hi, everyone. Thanks. It's just so great to be together. Like Constance was just saying, even though we can't see all your faces, it's nice to hear all your voices chiming in. Yeah, so membership dues, as usual. If you don't know, please feel free to send me an email if you're up to date or not. It's my email is my name, buffypennick@gmail.com. And the individual dues are 12 and households are 15. And I do just want to remind everyone that we have wonderful window decals. You probably can't see them all that great anyway. But if you download the form when you're doing your membership renewals, it's only $1 and I can send it out to so you can display your ECOC pride on your car. And I don't know, I think that's about it, Constance.
No, that's great. Thank you, Buffy.
Thank you,
And,
everyone. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. I would like to point out too that when we see that ECOC sticker on your car window, we know the cool kids are there. So I'd like to move on to sightings. So if we can open up the mic again, I want to hear about any cool birds you guys have been seeing.
This is Jared, white-winged crossbills at the end of Revere Street near Norton Farm this morning. Probably 7 or 8 of them in the pines around 9:30 in the morning.
Wow, what town is that, Jared?
That right across from Annisquam, right in Gloucester, sorry.
We have Jim McCoy as well. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, there are many people who've seen the common redpolls up on Plum Island and the Hellcat Trail. There were, I want to say 45 or so last time I was there. Also, if you're willing to go a little further afield, there were pine grosbeaks up on Pac Monadnock. And generally speaking, this is a fantastic year for winter finches. I think the memo is out about that. But if you don't have a feeder, Royalston is a great place to go to see pine grosbeak, evening grosbeak, things like that. But some of them are coming right here to Essex County if you're lucky.
Go ahead, Timothy Walker.
Yeah, I got a new yard bird this week of a glaucous gull.
What?
Yeah, in Boxford.
Wow.
Go ahead, Shiloh.
I got a juvenile king eider over at Andrews Point about a week or so ago.
Nice.
Timothy Walker, go ahead.
Oh no, that was it. There we go.
Sissy, do you have anything to say?
Just sort of my usual suspects, I guess, the common raven, and still with small flocks of house finches and goldfinches, there'll be some pine siskins. And there've been some white-throated sparrows here in the last few days, which is sort of funny. And Carolina wren, so.
Nice assortment.
Yeah.
And that's all I see, Constance, for hand raised.
Okay. Well, keep the bird reports coming. I know there's some great birds out there, so I hope you're finding those winter finches. I'd like to move on then to Book of the Month. Don Paul, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, what I have is not exactly a book. This is a magazine, and it's called Orion. I hope there's not too much glare on it here. And it's a wonderful magazine. It's called, their subject matter is people and nature. And so it's very broad. It's things from around the world, things that are very local. In fact, I was surprised that this magazine is actually produced in Northampton. So it's relatively local in Massachusetts. And it's a mixture of poetry, stories, articles on conservation, the environment, interesting places, interesting animals, including this little king penguin from Antarctica, a little snowy. And it does not have ads in it. So it's a beautiful publication, and it relies entirely on, I guess, donations and subscriptions. So they get away with not having ads to clutter it up. So it's really a very beautiful, and the writing is superb. I don't know that I've ever read anything in here that was not wonderful. It has humorous articles. It's a real mixed bag. So if you're looking for something interesting on your doorstep a couple of times a year, check out Orion, and it's at orionmagazine.org, orionmagazine.org, if you wanted to subscribe or just check out an issue.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. I
Welcome.
might have to put that on my list of Santa.
Yeah, think about that.
I think so. Thank you.
They
So
make great gifts.
yeah, great idea. Without further ado, here's Janie Winchell. She's the ECOC Vice President and Program Director and Director of the Art and Nature Center at the Peabody Essex Museum. She's going to introduce tonight's speaker. Hey, Janie.
Hi, Constance. Thanks for the intro, and so delighted to be here with all of you this evening. And in my hybrid capacity as both the Vice President for ECOC and then as Director of the Art and Nature Center for PEM, I'm really excited to be introducing tonight's speaker, Jared Keyes, a lifelong birder and more recent bird photographer whose images have attracted thousands of followers on Instagram and Facebook. Jared holds a degree from Harvard in East Asian languages and civilizations and has had a successful career in the financial sector. But his interest in birds dates back to his childhood in Concord, which is where he is now residing. Jared shares his passion for birds and conservation through his photography as a trip leader for Brookline Bird Club, serving as vice chair of the board for the Vermont Center for Eco Studies, and as a member of the advisory council for both Mass Audubon and Trustees of Reservations. In a typical year, meaning not 2020, Jared birds extensively at nearby Cape Ann, as well as on the West Coast of the US and in Asia. Tonight, he's going to take us with him to one of his favorite birding locales in Southeastern Arizona, the Madrid Sky Islands. Before I turn the program over to Jared, I want to remind everyone that you can put a question in the Q&A box for Jared to answer at the end of his talk, or alternatively, you can ask your question live at the end of the program by putting up your virtual hand, which is visible at the bottom of the screen. And our AV expert, Mark Wood, will unmute you so you can ask your question in person. So without further ado, I hope you'll all join me in welcoming Jared.
All right, I hope you guys can hear me, and I'm going to do exactly what Mark told me to do to make sure we get this thing cranking here. All right. All right, let's see some thumbs up if that's working.
You look good, sir. You're ready to begin.
Okay, fantastic. Well, listen, great. Thank you very much, Janie, and thank you everyone who's attending tonight. I am Jared Keyes, and I'm really delighted that so many of you have decided to spend the heart of your Friday night with me here. Over the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you my experience birding and photographing birds in Southeast Arizona. Just as an aside, actually, we've had a place in Gloucester for a couple of years, and we've actually spent the last, at least since March, we've been here in East Gloucester looking over 10 Pound Island. And it's been a great experience birding full time for the first time in Cape Ann and experiencing spring here, and it's been just wonderful. So I'm actually coming to you from Gloucester, Massachusetts right now. So listen, I'm going to start with an apology to everyone because although I talk a lot about birds when I lead field trips, I have not done many of these virtual presentations. And it is a rather surreal sitting here all alone in this room, just talking to this computer without seeing anybody and just yakking. So I'll do my best to relax and take a breath and transport myself to Arizona and imagine myself with all of you on the trail as we just take just another bird walk together. So in addition to an opening apology, I want to make a few appreciative shout outs. The first is to the Peabody Essex Museum and the Essex County Ornithological Club for co-hosting tonight's event and entrusting me with this precious hour of the time of members and friends. Thank you. I will do my best not to disappoint. The second shout out is to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Without their amazing online Birds of the World, I'd be really lost, not just for today's presentation, but really in general. Birds of the World serves as one of my primary resources for all the important science being done on the various bird species around the world. They have great taxonomic information. And of course, eBird is just that tool, which is second nature for all of us. The last shout out is to Zeno Canto. That's the crowdsourced bird sound database that's run out of the Netherlands. It makes available the entire range of vocalizations for virtually every bird species on the planet. And I find when I use it, I tend to seek out recordings of the same contributing recordists because they know what good quality recording is. And as required under the Zeno Canto usage agreement, I am going to cite a couple of names here, so just bear with me. And their work will be featured along with my pictures. So Richard Webster, Jared Swackhammer, Manuel Grosselet, Paul Marvin, Lauren Harder, Bobby Wilcox, Andrew Spencer, Chris McPherson, and Frank Lambert. Thank you very much for your contribution to this presentation. So I've been to Arizona 5 times. 2 of these visits were dedicated week-long birding trips that I arranged privately along with 2 birding buddies. We call ourselves the 3 birding musketeers, as nerdy as that is. And we've been taking annual trips in April for over a decade. We met on a vent trip in Cape May, these many years ago. And our first trip to Southeast Arizona was April of 2018, which is fairly recently, and that's why I just started taking pictures and was able to bring my camera with me. And we had, at that time, a guide from Benson, who we went around with, and then we returned again in 2019 on our own and explored the same area of Southeast Arizona using just eBird and a rental car to find targeted species. Birds like the 5-striped sparrow and the northern pygmy owl. That second trip, we also birded Prescott, Arizona, which is north of Phoenix up on top of the Mogollon Ridge in central Arizona. We were there for several days with a local guide, and I'm really happy to share offline with folks our experience there because it was an incredibly rich and rewarding Arizona experience. And I think in many ways, Prescott is a really good gateway location for the Southwest. If for no other reason that so many habitats are accessible in such a short drive. This is the opposite of Southeast Arizona. There are some real significant time spent in the car. Your backside develops a really close relationship with the car seat, and there's stretches of road that just feel so vast. So as I work through the virtual trip with you, I'll actually be combining the 2 trips into sort of a single experience from a photo and a sequencing perspective. So something about me to start. I've loved birding as long as I can remember. This isn't me, but it might as well be. I was happiest and smiling when I was eating. I had a grandmother who was a keen birder and traveled the world for birds. She even lived in Arizona for a period of time in the early 50s. I banded birds in college and was part of a team that reopened a bird banding station, actually located in an old chicken coop, and you could smell it, on the Maine coast. And having birds in the hand was and continues to be just a great privilege. It's something I hope all of you have had the chance or will have the chance to experience. I really had every intention of pursuing ornithology in college, but then I had a frighteningly close encounter with organic chemistry, and in the nick of time discovered Mandarin Chinese, a language that quickly became my major back in 1980. I mention Mandarin because those of you who follow my work on social media know that I post quite a few Asian birds. And I've actually, depending on how this goes today, I may try my hand at doing an introduction to the birds of Taiwan. It's an amazing place for birds. Also a really important, I think, gateway location for Asia. I've tried to keep my hand in bird conservation through nonprofit volunteering, as Janie mentioned. And the Vermont Center for Eco Studies is a really important place for me. I've been on the board for almost 10 years. And I'd urge all of you to check out their field notes on their website for those who love the Bicknell's thrush and the common loon and bees and butterflies, things like e-butterfly that we created in partnership with the Insectarium and the University of Chicago. Those are all tools which folks who are into butterflies will know all about. So I took up photography when I was 12. I had an uncle who ran a photography gallery on Fisher's Island and himself was quite an accomplished photographer. And I basically lived in darkrooms in high school. In terms of combining birding and cameras, I have to say that for many years, I really looked down my nose at bird photographers. And part of it was that I probably sort of, was just sort of a stuck-up purist bird watcher. And part of it was being genuinely irritated with what I thought was a lot of really marginal behavior by bird photographers in the name of getting the shot. Then 4 years ago, when I was in Taiwan, I joined a bird guide and her ornithologist husband on a trip into the mountains. And I ended up acting as a spotter and a translator for some bird photographers from Singapore. And that sort of pulled me in and I haven't been able to get out since. Nowadays, I rarely go out without my Nikon setup and my monopod and just feel like I've become a better birder because of photography. I was once sort of a whole bird identification person, leaving a lot to general impression. And now I really try to go through that Atul list and be more methodical about evaluating field marks and making a rational checklist of characteristics. I'm still far from perfect and I still get my share of mortifying eBird slapdowns. I'm always looking in my inbox to see whether I'm misidentified something. I think if you submit a lot of lists, you're inevitably going to get a bunch of slapdowns, or at least that's what I say to myself. So Southeast Arizona is truly one of the special places on Earth and the US. The area records annually about 400 bird species identified, with another 100 seen less frequently. So depending on how you calculate it, over the course of the year, you can see about half the species that are regularly seen across the US. For those who have been there, this is what I call the gateway into the Chirikawas. We're on the east side of the Chiricahua Madrid Sky Island. The New Mexico border is behind us. Portal, the town of Portal is quite nearby. And if we were to go straight into that canyon, we would go up to the Southwest Research Station that's run by the American Museum of Natural History, and then over Onion Saddle to the other side of the Chirikawas. But you look at a place like this, and when I first went to Southeast Arizona, I'm looking around, I'm saying, God, this place looks dry and desolate. But let me tell you, the place is full of birds. And the reason there's so many birds, it's all about habitat and all about geography. Southeast Arizona lies at this intersection of two deserts, the Sonoran to the west and the Chihuahuan to the southeast, and two mountain ranges, the Rockies to the north and the Mexico Sierra Madres Occidental to the south. And these features act as habitat pathways that lead right to the front door of Southeast Arizona. As the Nature Conservancy puts it, it is the place where the bighorn sheep and the northern goshawk meet the jaguar and the thick-billed parrot. And I would call that a pretty special place. So let's start with the deserts. Actually, Arizona is home to parts of all 4 US desert biomes. The Mojave penetrates the northwest corner from Nevada and California. The Great Basin Desert occupies limited parts of northern Arizona. The Sonoran is by far the largest presence in Arizona, taking up about 35–40% of the state, and is the desert in which Phoenix and Tucson are embedded. And then finally, the Chihuahuan Desert penetrates in a limited way through fingers up into the state, but most importantly, encompass the San Pedro River Valley, which is one of the most diverse biomes in the country. The Chihuahuan Desert is considered the most biologically diverse desert in the Western Hemisphere. It's bounded on the east and the west by the Sierra Madres, and it is just enormous. It covers some 250,000 square miles in north central Mexico and into the US. And like the Great Basin in the US, there's a large part in the middle where water flow is self-contained and results in salt lakes and playas and just amazing habitat for birds. In the US, the Chihuahuan Desert covers, as you can see here, West Texas, parts of New Mexico, and of course, Southeast Arizona. And while the Chihuahuan is a really hot desert, it experiences frequent winter frosts, and in the north part, actually hard freezes. And this really dictates the kind of flora that can exist in the Chihuahuan Desert. That's very different. The Sonoran doesn't have those types of freezes. So you get these cool grasses that are actually kind of a lily, yuccas of all kinds like Tory and banana yucca, also agave of all sorts. And these are known as century plants. And they, 20 or 30 years, they develop reserves and they then shoot up a great stalk of a flower, and that section of the agave dies and all the shoots sort of keep going. The Sonoran is what we think of as the classic Southwest desert. It's filled with towering saguaro cactus, agave, yucca, and all this desert scrub bushes like mesquite and palo verde. What folks may not realize is that the Sonoran Desert hosts every recognizable biome except tundra and provides a habitat link between the Madrean tropical and subtropical woodlands of Mexico. And those woodlands, it's oak, it's alligator juniper, it's pinyon pine. And what links in is the Rockies temperate forests, which is conifers, but mixed with aspen and maples. So these deciduous trees don't just mix with the conifers in Southeast Arizona, they actually can take hold of the upper canopy. So it's a wonderful blend of different trees at all types of different levels. So I'm not going to tarry on this next. It's a very busy graphic, but if you look at that section of Southeast Arizona above Nogales and just to the southeast of Tucson, what you'll see is just a mosaic of habitats, and that brown is grassland, and that grassland, this is an example of the grasslands in that section of Southeast Arizona. These are vast, iconic stretches of grassland, which are literally right out of the movies and host enormous ranches. The Nature Conservancy is doing very important work out there. They're trying to protect the vast majority of these, working closely with ranchers. And thanks to watering holes like this one, the area has these huge concentrations of the most incredible abundance of grassland birds and sparrows, buntings, long spurs, larks, of all sorts. It's just fantastic. So where do these biomes actually play out in Southeast Arizona? Well, now I'm going to try something that's probably a terrible idea, but anyways, I'm going to go for it anyways. So first, let me orient you to this map. So this is the Mexican-US border there. This is Arizona, New Mexico border, and Phoenix is up in that direction. So the trip that we took was in this region. That's 57 Sky Islands are represented in this part of US and Mexico. And what you can see so vividly is that the mountains are like an archipelago floating in this sea, but in this case, it's not water. It's just these vast expanses of desert. And one of the things that struck me when I first got there was you'd look at these mountain ranges and you'd think, God, they have to be just as dry and desiccated and you know, limited types of plants as are down in the valley. But you get up into particularly the northeast facing valleys, and you get into these canyons where there's huge amounts of beautiful trees, deciduous trees, bubbling brooks. So our combined trip over 2 years involved much of the same terrain each time, with only a couple of new forays into what I'd call sort of unexplored territory in search of lifers the second time. So here's an overview of our route. So we start, oh, there we go. Well, let me get it going. There we go. We started in Tucson, up the Santa Catalina Mountains, up Mount Lemmon to Summer Haven and Marshall Gulch, back down to the Tucson Valley, into the Santa Rita's, Box Canyon, Madera Canyon, and then into the Santa Cruz River, this beautiful riparian habitat, past Tubac, Tumacacori, and then on Ruby Road, between the Parajitos and the Atascosas, which is just unbelievably remote areas, into Sycamore Canyon. You've got to be really careful in this area. You've got to bring a lot of water. You got to go with someone. You don't see anyone else but Border Patrol, with people being apprehended. And there's some really funky stuff going on in there, but man, are there great birds. So then you head up, cross I-19 and head up into those grassland areas I showed you. Around Sonoyta, there's this beautiful Sonoyta Creek Reserve of the Nature Conservancy, the Patton Center for Hummingbirds, and then drop into the San Pedro River Valley. And here are the Huachucas down in here: Ash Canyon, Hunter Canyon, Carr Canyon, and this is Ramsey Canyon, where we'll end the tour right in here. And as you go up the river, Benson's right here, the San Pedro House Riparian Sanctuary, one of the great riparian national wildlife sanctuaries in the country. And then off in the morning to the Wilcox and Cochise Lakes. So much of the water in this region comes from water treatment plants. In fact, the San Pedro River and the Santa Cruz River, something like 80% of the water comes from water treatment plants in Mexico. And trust me, if they decide to start reclaiming that water, this region is going to be in an unbelievable world of hurt. So then we're down into the Chirikawas, up Pinery Canyon Road, over Onion Saddle, down to Portal, a beautiful scenic town with great birding, and then back up to I-10, and then through Benson and home. So this was our route. Looks something like Dino the dinosaur from the Flintstones, don't you think? A little bit. Anyways, that'll orient you a little bit to Southeast Arizona. And let me go back and see if I can actually, what do you know? Let us get back into this. So the most amazing thing, if you're gonna bird Southeast Arizona, everyone, you have to get this book. This is the Bible of birding in Southeast Arizona. And it's by Tucson Audubon. There's a foreword by Ken Kaufman, and it breaks the Southeast Arizona into 12 regions. And it has hot spots. It has great maps. Even from Mount Lemmon, it has mile marker maps. It has charts showing when birds are going to be around. It's just a wonderful resource, not only if you're going to search the place by yourself, but a way to get oriented if you're in a group. But the really special thing about Southeast Arizona is that you can wake up one morning in New England, seeing this bird on an April morning. And of course, this is a dark-eyed Junko, slate colored. And then the next day, you ascend the Santa Catalina Mountains on the outskirts of Tucson, and you see this gorgeous exotic bird next. This is a yellow-eyed Junko, but not just any yellow-eyed Junko. This is the more northerly of two Mexican Junko subspecies. And Southeast Arizona and Southwest New Mexico are the only places you're going to find them in the US. Now, depending on how you categorize the volcano and the Guadalupe Juncos, all the Juncos in North America belong to just two umbrella species group, yellow-eyed and dark-eyed. The slate colored we just saw is a dark-eyed, and this Mexican Junco is a yellow-eyed. The wonderful rabbit hole challenge of Juncos, however, is that between those two species, there are as many as 20 regional population subspecies. Here's another view of the Mexican yellow-eyed Junco, and let's take a listen to its vocalization. So then you look up in a tree and you say, whoa, there's a Mexican Junco that has dark eyes. And your buddy looks at you and shakes and says, no, you dope, that's a dark-eyed Junco. And then you say, whoa, you're right, that's a redback Junco, a dark-eyed Junco subspecies. And then of course, you would be right. Here's a more complete view of the redback dark-eyed Junco. Just a beautiful coloring. And let's listen to the vocalization. So now technically, if we were here in Southeast Arizona a few months earlier, we may also have been able to find one of 6 subspecies of the Oregon Junco, which is also a dark-eyed Junco subspecies group. Now this photo, I'm cheating a little bit because this was actually taken in the foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains in Northern California. So this is a third-berry subspecies. The Oregon Junco you could see in Southeast Arizona is most likely the Montanus Oregon Junco, which has a grayer back, but of course you can't see from this photo anyways. Suffice it to say that there are 3 relatively regular Junco subspecies sightings that are possible in this part of Arizona. Once again, here's the Mexican yellow-eyed Junco. I think the bird that I consider just the mesmerizing jewel of the greater Junco complex. So as you descend Mount Lemmon, and this is looking south, you can see the Santa Ritas in the distance. And if you look in, this is Tucson down there, and it looks like there's a lake in Tucson, but that's not a lake. That is the most massive Air Force base with bombers and fighters that you've ever seen. But anyways, so as you head down the 27-mile-long Catalina Highway that climbs a mile in elevation from Tucson, as you head back, there's a number of familiar faces that you're going to see, including, of course, the ever-present turkey vulture, which breeds all the way from southern Canada all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. I show this photo not because it's any great shakes, but because there's one thing you learn to do when you see a kettle of turkey vultures in the sky in Southeast Arizona. You try to pick out a certain other bird. And I'm sure many of you know exactly what this is. This is a zone-tailed hawk. With a close-up photo like this, it's a little tough to tell how similar this raptor is to a turkey vulture, but when it's soaring as part of a kettle, the zone tails will ape the tippy V dihedral of motion of a turkey vulture, a behavior that it uses as a hunting tactic. So let's listen to the zone tail hawk. Now the zone tail is actually a real challenge for eBird because it is so often confused with this secretive hawk, particularly when perched. This is a common black hawk, and these raptors share a lot of characteristics. Both are entirely migratory in the desert Southwest. They breed in the same riparian habitats. They're the only jet black hawks in the US, and they're among the few buteos that have no light morphs. So what you see with zone tails and common blackhawks is what you get. Fortunately, in flight, it is really somewhat hard to conflate these two because the common blackhawk has a super low aspect ratio. Well, what is an aspect ratio? That means that the front to back measurement of their wing is a large percentage of the length of the wing. So I sort of think of this raptor as being the raptor version of a ruffed grouse. And I don't know what you guys think, but let's listen to the common blackhawk. a little bit like a wimpy eagle, or maybe a fishhawk. All right, from Mount Lemmon, we head south toward the Santa Rita Range that we saw in the distance of that picture. Our first stop is going to be Box Canyon. Now, unless you have a lot of time in your hands or taking the scenic shortcut to Sonoita, you are not likely going to visit Box Canyon, particularly with Madeira and Florida Canyon right down the way in the Santa Ritas. I went there with my two buddies because an eBird alert reported a 5-striped sparrow, which would be a new bird for all three of us. Well, as it turned out, Box Canyon had much more in store from us than just the 5-striped sparrow. The first special bird we encountered was this cute little creature. And that's right, it is a rock wren. Now this may seem like a pretty mundane little creature, and this is not the greatest shot of a rock wren, but it is really hard to get a visual on this bird because it is not only super secretive, but it just blends in with the rocks around it. Well, this was just hanging out on the side of the road shortly after we turned around to come back down. We'd gone quite high and gone past the 5-striped sparrow hotspot. And the bird was just where it should be, right on a rock. And this bird has an amazing voice, which you just can't mix up with any other bird. Let's listen. The pacing, it's almost like a yellow-breasted chat. It waits and then goes again. But just wonderful pacing from that rock wren. Okay, so when it comes to rock wrens, what you really want to see is the nest, because there's a little bit of bower bird in a rock wren. So this is not my photo, it's by someone named Nate Warning. But this image shows that the rock wren is sort of a skilled mason. It sets both a pebbled foundation in the crevice where it puts the nest, but also lays this front walk of pavers. Cornell describes this rock wren nest on the Farallon Island where the whole construction involved like over 1,600 pieces of material, of which less than 500 were rocks. The rest was this whole potpourri of items like tacks and clothespins and glass and nails and mollusk shell fragments, just this unbelievable amalgam of items. And the rock wren was not the only wren we ID'd that afternoon. We also encountered one of the least studied birds in the US. Anyone recognize this little guy? Yeah, this is a canyon wren. This bird you all will get to know intimately when you visit Southeast Arizona. And it's not because you see it. In fact, you may never see it, but it's because its song rings out in virtually every canyon you enter. And even though it doesn't seem to be singing very loud, you can hear this sucker all over the place. So let's listen to this incredibly distinctive voice. Inevitably, you're looking up at some escarpment and hearing this bird, just wondering where it is. So no sooner had we finished observing this diminutive little 7.5-inch wingspan guy that we looked up and saw this majestic raptor with a 6.5-foot wingspan. I'm sure you all know this one. This is a golden eagle. This bird had a immature or a juvenile in tow. And this golden eagle is a year-round resident in Southeast Arizona. These birds have territories of 10 to 20 square miles and will be maintaining at any given time 10 to 15 nest sites that sort of mark the territory. So let's listen to the golden eagle's call, but sort of recognize that as majestic as these raptors are to look at, their voices do leave just a tad bit to be desired. There's no better confirmation of this in the fact that there are movies that feature things like bald eagles, and they actually dub in red-tailed hawks to beef up the soundtrack. And I don't know about you other birders, but I hate when they have the wrong bird in the wrong place or the wrong sound. But anyways, here's the golden eagles. All right, next up is this bird. This is the ash-throated flycatcher. Other than the kingbirds, the Tyrannus kingbirds, like the couches, the cassins, the western, the tropical, thick-billed, the Myarchus group of flycatchers, of which this ash-throated belongs, for me is one of the most challenging IDs in Southeast Arizona. There's 4 Myarchus flycatchers that you regularly encounter here: this ash-throated, dusky-capped, gray-crested, and brown-crested. And all I can tell you is learn their calls. Your life will be much easier. Let's listen to the ash-throated flycatcher. All right, so now on to our sparrow troubles. So now I don't know if you all have ever seen 3 later middle-aged men all get a lifer at the same time, but I can tell you it is more than a little comical. It involves a lot of whooping and jumping around, not very high, mind you, hugging and high-fiving. It's a really joyous affair. Well, having asked a couple of birders in an old station wagon if they had seen the 5-striped sparrow, we headed back down the canyon to a bridge by some water and away from the stakeout hotspot to the supposed spot that they claimed to have seen it. And no sooner had we gotten out of the car that we spotted this bird. You should have seen the ensuing celebration for our 5-striped sparrow. The problem is, of course, that this is not a 5-striped sparrow. This is a black-throated sparrow. Now, if you all are people of generous spirit, you will forgive us for the concurrent 3-way whiff because of the 131 species of New World sparrows, the black-throated and the 5-stripe inhabit their own genus of 2, the Amphispisa. Let's take a listen to this wonderful black-throated sparrow. Of course, once you've seen the 5-striped sparrow, as we did finally realize our mistake, we drove back up the canyon, our tails between our legs, and found this bird. Once you see it, there's little mistaking it. Just behold this deep chocolate plumage on its back, the wings, the head. It's just a luscious color. Let's listen. So, of course, this bird really does have 5 stripes, right? It's got 2 malar or mustachioed white stripes. It's got 1 white chin stripe, and it has 1 white stripe on each supercilium. This is a really rare bird in the US. In Mexico, maybe not so much, but it's still incredibly secretive. It lives in the Western Sierra Madres, and is fundamentally only going to be seen in the US right here in the Santa Ritas, and then only when the bird is singing in spring. Now, you may slog it over to that incredibly remote place that I mentioned down Ruby Road to find California Gulch even further down the road in the Parajitos, right along the Mexican border, but good luck with that. That is some isolated spot. There are 5-striped sparrows there, but Box Canyon's right near Tucson, so just schlep it up there. It'll be a little easier on you. Let's listen one last time to the 5-striped sparrow. All right, well, let's leave Box Canyon and make a brief stop in Madera Canyon. And no, we're not stopping at the Santa Rita Lodge for ice cream or feeder watching. And we are going straight to the end of White House Canyon Road to hike up Carrie Nation Trail and see if we can find this very special bird. Yep, this is the elegant Trogon. And let's listen to its amazing vocalization. So Trogons are an ancient family of birds that are found in various forms on 4 continents. But seeing it here in the US just transports you to the tropics. Of the 24 members of the Trogon family that can be found in the Americas, the elegant is considered probably the most adaptable. because in places like Guatemala, you see it on the coast, you see it mid-elevation, you can see it over 6,000 feet. And I'm sure this adaptability is a big part of why they're comfortable coming so far north. Now, generally, the elegant trogon is the only trogon you can find in the US. However, this year in June, an eared quetzal, which was formerly called the eared trogon, showed up in the Chirikawas, not far from the American Museum of Natural History's famed Southwestern Research Station. I wish I could see a show of hands of those amongst you who know about this bird and are as bird nerds as I am and fixated on it. Based on my review of eBird, the quetzal made the slip in early July, but was reported and respotted in October and was photographed as recently as a couple of days ago. And you'll find the sightings in eBird. Just go to the Chirikawas. I'm afraid I do not have a photo. Sorry, there's a little teaser. You'll have to Google that one. Let's listen one last time to the elegant trogon. Sounds nothing like anything else that you're going to be hearing. And the amazing thing about that sound is it actually echoes in the canyons. We heard one in Ramsey later in the trip. And just a lovely sound. All right, well, let's head back down the valley and explore the Santa Cruz River, which, as you remember, runs north-south and is fed out of Mexico. This photo is right off the Nature Conservancy website, and I'm sorry, but it's actually not the Santa Cruz, it's the San Pedro River, which is over to the east and parallels Santa Cruz. But it is a very similar depiction to what you find along the Santa Cruz. It's this lush band of green cutting through an otherwise desperately arid landscape. So we're headed to a 4-mile section of river off of I-19 between the towns of Tubac and Tumacacori. We're going to enter the site via the famed Santa Gertrudis Lane, which everyone will know if they go to Southeast Arizona, at the southern end, at the Tumacacori end. This spot, along with the San Pedro House Riparian Sanctuary on the San Pedro River, are among my favorite places in Southeast Arizona. And roaming under these great canopy of cottonwoods and willows is just a joy. And if you keep your ears and eyes open, you might find one of these characters. This is another neotropical bird that you are not likely going to find anywhere else in the desert Southwest at this moment, except right here where we're standing right now on this small section of the Santa Cruz River. These are rose-throated Bacards, the male and the female. There are 16 Bacards in the genus, and while most of them reside within South America proper, the rose-throated is a year-round resident from Panama all the way through Mexico, and it has a couple of little migratory fingers that extend into Southeast, actually not migratory, they're actually permanent resident fingers that extend into Southeast Arizona, and then one into the lower Rio Grande. And in fact, this year, there have been a couple of rose-throated Bacards located in far south Texas near the Rio Grande. Let's take a listen to some vocalization. So we spent a good part of the morning searching for this pair of Bacards along the riverbed. The key was to follow the trail of completely disheveled looking nests hanging in the cottonwoods. They looked like small orbs of mistletoe. And once found, these birds provided terrific entertainment because as hardworking as the female was, and man was she hardworking, the male just struck us as completely hapless. He milled about busily with nesting materials, as you see here, and never seeming to know quite what to do with it. He never handed it off to the female. He never placed it anywhere remotely useful. And we sort of presumed it must be a young male adult bird that was still fuzzy on his post-copulation responsibilities. Let's listen to a final vocalization of the rose-throated Bacard. This is a good vocalization to know when you're looking for this bird. So between the combination of the Santa Cruz and the San Pedro waterways, we saw a remarkable variety of riparian loving birds. And here's a sampling. This is a gray hawk. This raptor was originally known as the Mexican goshawk for sort of obvious reasons, and not just because of its color, but because of its flying agility in the trees. It's been in and out of the Buteo genus, where it currently resides. The greyhawk nests along streams and hunts in the surrounding scrub and has a particular eye for mesquite habitats. You will undoubtedly hear this raptor when you visit Southeast Arizona. So really best to learn to recognize it. It's a little bit like the common black hawk, but you'll get. Okay, this bird is a bridal tip mouse. It's really a largely Mexican bird, which you're only going to see in this part of the country. And this is the most southerly of the 5 titmice that one might see. And most interestingly, it often raises its young with the assistance of other unpaired bridal titmice. These helpers, they feed nestlings and fledglings, they remove fecal sacs, they help defend territory. And this is cooperative breeding. It's a relatively rare behavior in birds. Something like 3% of birds practice this behavior. And those of you who have read about cooperative breeding probably have done so in regard to scrub jays and the fairy wren in Australia. Those are the headline species, but these bridal titmouse also practices cooperative breeding. So this bird is, right, it's a Juniper Tip Mouse. Now listen, this is totally out of sequence in this deciduous riparian valley, but I love this photograph because I worked really hard to get it, and I wanted you to see the other titmouse that you will likely encounter in Arizona. This is a pure red, white, and blue species because its territory encompasses basically a blob around the 4 corners and into Nevada. Let's listen to the Juniper titmouse. This is a really diagnostic song, and once you hear it, you know you've got yourself a Juniper titmouse. We worked really hard to find this down a number of dry pine roads, and I think we got it on our last day. Hummingbirds in Southeast Arizona are an entire subject unto themselves, and I will leave that for another presenter to tackle. But I did want to comment on this particular hummer. This is a broad-billed hummingbird. Anywhere we went to find hummers in Southeast Arizona, the broad-billed was present. That said, while it's seen in onesies and twosies as vagrants across much of southern US, this is really a Mexican species, and it's really only in Southeast Arizona and Southwest Mexico that you're going to encounter it regularly. We felt really fortunate to find this nesting female on the Santa Cruz River. As you can see, we got there very early, and I love the way the morning light illuminates the spider silk that she's weaving into her nest. Some of you are going to look at this nest and say, gosh, that doesn't look like it's finished, because many of these hummingbirds basically shingle their nests with lichen. This bird is actually just about finished. They leave their nest quite, it's an unfinished sort of disheveled look with all the spider silk showing, but it's still a lovely, lovely nest. Here's one of the broad-billed hummingbirds' sort of squeaky vocalizations. Okay, the place I'd like to bring you to next is the Huachucas, the sky island that rises on the west side of the San Pedro River, south of Benson. And to get there, you cross through this amazingly beautiful, iconic grassland that exists in the Southwest. But before we head to the Huachucas, I'd like to take a break from talking and just toggle through some of my photographs of the more common birds that you're going to find in the region. So I've titled each one, I've found their matching songs, and I've done my best to match each bird's sex with that sex vocalization. I've also thrown in a couple of small curveballs. I've set up the show so that it can serve as a quiz for anyone wishing to participate. The image will appear along with the sound, and there'll be a pause before the name of the species appears. Anyone who gets them all right or close, let the moderator know and we'll give you an honorable mention. I'm not even sure I could pass this test, but anyways, you guys can give it a try. I hope you enjoy the respite from my constant talking, and let us get going with the show. The pacing of this bird, I'm sorry, I'm talking again. You can actually, there's two other males singing and it waits for them to finish and then it sings again. Oops. This is the one with the pacing a little bit like the rock wren. Big rests in between. This is a sound you hear all over Southeast Arizona. You can actually hear the canyon wren, the cactus wren in the background. All right, well, that's the end of the, what's called the quiz. And I guess I have a couple of questions. One, did anyone get all the species right? That would be rock star status. If you do, let the moderator, let the moderator know. The second is, did anyone fall asleep? I hope not. So anyways, that's a number of the birds that you'll be seeing there, and it's worth getting to know all of their songs because you will hear them frequently. That black-chinned sparrow, that is really hard to see. We're very lucky it came out on that bush. We heard it going up into Hunter Canyon, buried amongst the ground plants, and never got to look at it, but we did get it when we were in Prescott. That's actually where I took that picture. All right, so let's head now to the Huachuca Range, which is off to the east of the grasslands that we were just seeing. And let's climb one last canyon together. It's my favorite. It's called Ramsey Canyon. And while we're there, we'll look at 5 final birds, of which 4 will be warblers. And you say, okay, well, why warblers? Well, the fact is that this past spring, I really did miss seeing warblers with many of you. In Mount Auburn, Goose Cove Reservation, Dykes Pond, saw some wonderful warblers, but it was sad to not be able to do it together. So I thought, well, what the heck, let's do some warblers. So you arrive at Ramsey Canyon early because the parking lot is tiny and it fills up early like Walden Pond or Good Harbor Beach on a hot day. Further, there's no parking on the access road, a strategy employed by the Nature Conservancy to limit human impact on the canyon. The trail is 7.5 miles of some very steep going to get to Miller Peak at 9,500 feet. But we'll stop about halfway where the trail flattens onto a cool, shaded mix of conifers and deciduous trees, a place that struck me really as being distinctly New England like. And the picture on the right, you can see that there's a stream, a bubbling stream. There's 12 months of water that comes down. It gets a little, there's not a ton toward the end of the season, but there's always water in that canyon. And it's incredibly lush when you get up in there. All right, so what is this bird? Any takers? This is a flame-colored tanager. And though quite common in the Mexican highlands and Central America, this is only one single place in the US where this bird has been regularly seen over the past several years. Now we saw it, and I took this picture in Ramsey, but most recently it was in Miller Canyon, just down south in the Huachucas, right over a couple of ridges. It appears to be a lone male, and there's been no reports that I could find in eBird of a female. And so I would say that this bird is arguably one of the rarest birds that one will encounter. And even then, it hasn't been seen in about 5 months. Here's the tanager song. Very scarlet tanager-esque. All right, then up in the trees, we hear an emphatic warbler song, which sounds a bit like a Wilson's warbler, you know, that sort of run out of gas quality. And then we get a visual and we say, man, is that a yellow-throated warbler? Well, it's neither, of course. It is a Grace's warbler. This lovely creature is a member of the Setophoga genus, it's probably a genus, which has 33 of the warblers that we all know and love. It's a year-round resident in the coniferous forests of the Western Sierra Madres in Mexico and at the high elevations in Central America. But lucky for us, a very small portion of those birds choose to fly north and breed in the pine woodlands of the desert Southwest. Now, it doesn't run out of gas like a Wilson's, but it has some of the characteristics. Particularly a West Coast Wilson's. All right, so who knows what this next warbler is? This is another quite common bird from New Mexico all the way to South America, northern Mexico all the way to South America. In the US, however, this is a true gem of a rarity. This is a rufous-capped warbler. And based on my search of eBird this morning, the rufous-capped can really only be found in about 5 distinct locations in Southeast Arizona. 2 of these are right in the Huachucas, right nearby, Huachucas. We staked out this bird in Hunter Canyon in 2018, and we were rewarded after quite some time with wonderful views when it finally appeared down in this quite overgrown gulch that runs up the center of the canyon. A little bit of a Canada warbler lilt. So this next bird is so rare that it hasn't even been seen in the US since shortly after I took this picture in 2018. Apparently that spring, this very bird paired up with a painted redstart that we'll see in a second, which is in the same genus, and they actually reproduced successfully. Now, successfully meaning they actually had progeny. That doesn't mean that that progeny is going to be successful in having its own progeny. That's the definition of fitness, and it's likely that their progeny will not reproduce successfully. But what is this bird? This is a slate-throated redstart. It's actually the most widespread of the 12 Mayaboris New World warblers, and it's found all the way down to Ecuador. And don't be confused when you look this up in a book, because as you move down its range, region by region, down to Ecuador, when you finally get to that southern region, it doesn't have a brick red breast. It actually has a beautiful yellow breast by the time you get there. So let's take a listen to the slate-throated redstart. All right, so this fellow is in the same Cardellina genus as the Canada and the Wilson's warbler. It is the aptly named red-faced warbler. It is a wonderful constant present at mid and higher elevations and can be found regularly as far north as Flagstaff, which is really the northern limit of its territory. Its song is amazingly variable. Some individuals sound like a musical American redstart, others sound like chestnut-sideds or yellows. Otherwise, it is just a wonderfully familiar sound, I think. What does this song remind you of? Canada, right? That is some beautiful bird. So last but not least is this lovely character. And I want to end with this image because personally I consider it to be one of my best pictures I've ever taken of a bird. This is a painted redstart, the kind of bird that that mated with that with the slate-throated redstart. Wherever you see a red-faced warbler that we just saw, you are bound to encounter one of these as well. In fact, these two birds' range maps are virtually identical from their high elevation wintering grounds in Mexico and Central America to their limited breeding range in Arizona. The main difference between the painted is that it's a year-round resident in most of its territory. And some of the birds, for whatever reason, decide that they're going to come north to breed rather than stay as permanent residents. So like the Grace's warbler, it's only partially migratory, and we benefit for it in Southeast Arizona. So folks, that is it. I hope you've all enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed putting it together and reliving the visit. And I guess now let's see if there's time. We'll open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Jared. Incredible experience joining along on your adventures in that remarkable part of the country. And I kept thinking to myself, how on earth are you getting these pictures of these very small, fast moving birds? Because so many of them are small. And was there one sort of general thing that you were using as a strategy for capturing them?
Well, you know, when I was in Taiwan and acting as that spotter, this wonderful expat photographer from Singapore, I got to know Con Foley, F-O-L-E-Y, who has a wonderful gallery on the web. I asked him what I should get to start taking pictures. And he said, if you're going to take pictures of small birds and it's going to be dark, and trust me, it was dark where this painted redstart was. He said, get a fixed big glass 300 millimeter lens, f2.8, big glass, but light enough that you can carry it. So I didn't have my monopod then. So this was, most of the pictures I took here were just handheld.
Wow.
Often very wide open aperture. I end up taking a lot of pictures because frankly, a very small number have a tack sharp eye, which is what you really want. But it really was it's that 300 millimeter fixed that anything bigger than that just gets too heavy. You just can't, you couldn't possibly take pictures of small birds with them.
Well, incredible though, really. Beautiful pictures and loved hearing them combined with their song. I feel like that adds so much to the experience of feeling like you're there and with you when you were seeing them. So thanks for putting all that all together as well.
Well, I'm delighted. I tend to be a more auditory birder. And so, having the sounds as part of the presentation is really important. I said I birded with those two other friends. Any of us individually is sort of an okay birder, but together we become this uber birder because this one guy, Dave, can just see anything. He just doesn't even need his binoculars. He doesn't know bird song from Adam, but man, this guy can just see anything. And then Rich is this wonderful bridge in between. So I'm the sort of bird song person. Dave is this, can find nests and birds and places. And so being with complementary birders who can bring it all together, that makes a big difference in what you end up by finding.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we definitely had some questions. Let's start. Jim McCoy actually is using our hand feature. So go ahead. Yeah, go for it, Jim.
Hi, Jared. Good to see you. Great job.
Thank you so much.
So as an early adopter of COVID-19, I got to use my, we recovered early and got immunity. So I got to use the ticket that I already had to go to Southeast Arizona this spring. But I missed Ramsey Canyon because I had heard that there was a really bad fire there a few years ago, and I was told it was not the same. But I'm hearing from you that it was awfully good. So did you hear anything about how it compared present day to a few years ago?
Well, listen, I was there in 2019, and I think what you're talking about is Hunter, because Hunter Canyon, where I had the Rufus crowns, Rufus capped warbler, had been completely burned out, and it really was very hard to see. Ramsey, Ramsey was absolutely pristine, so I'm not sure if maybe
you probably had bad information.
I think you got bad information.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it is just an astonishing place, and the trouble with it, I would have loved to have shared some more pictures. We got the Mexican spotted owl up there, a number of great birds, and I could stay up there just all day long. And it is an all-day affair. You work yourself up there, you have really done something, because it is a long way up.
Hey, we did have a couple of people asking when you think is the best time of year to visit, and also, are you leading any trips, because they'll sign up in a heartbeat.
Listen, I haven't been there during the monsoon summer season, so it's hard for me to comment on one versus the other. Both our guides said, look, you got to come back in the summer. But I'll tell you, April, we always went. One of the guys is in money management, so we always go after tax season. So we leave April 16th and do a week after that. So we found that to be just a fabulous time to go. You had the migratory birds that have arrived, the really incredible variety. Mid-April to late April, great time. And if you get that book, Finding Birds in Southeast Arizona, you can just line up those bar charts and you can see it visually when you want to be there.
Thank you.
We had a question too about what seasons are these birds present in this area? So if you're going there, you're going to see the same representation of species, or does that shift from one time of the year to another?
No, there's a lot of migratory birds that are in there, including a lot that we saw today. So there's a big shift in the birds that you're going to see. ones that, aren't there in the winter. I mean, that Oregon Junko, we've never seen an Oregon Junko there. We've only seen that Mexican and the red-backed. So there's a big variety of change over seasons, which is why everyone says, come back in the summer. I don't know about the winter as much, but so many of the birds simply haven't arrived yet. Those ones that are coming and tend to feel like sort of the more tropical birds. So for me, I mean, it works out for our schedule anyways, but late April is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And then tagging on to that, this was Karen Fox. She was also wondering about why mostly small birds. As opposed, there were the hawks and the eagles, but she was struck that there were so many small species, and if you had some observation about that.
Well, what I didn't include, because I just didn't have time, when I was showing what our route was in Southeast Arizona, I mentioned that we went from Benson, went past Cochise and Wilcox Lakes on our way to the Chirikawas. Well, let me tell you, Cochise Lake, which is next to the Wilcox golf course, and is basically, it's a sort of it's clean water, but it's a clean effluent. Oh my God, I mean, there were ibis and phalaropes. It is the first stopping spot, and mostly females were there at that point. They were there first, because of course the females do all the sort of act like the males in the phalaropes. So they had arrived. They were everywhere. So there were a lot of shorebirds that I just didn't have time to get to. And a lot of ducks and whatever. So yeah, there's some great mid-size birds to be seen without question. There's only so much you can show.
Yeah, given how many species you said are occurring in that part of Arizona.
Right, right. And you go to these like the Patton Center for Hummingbirds or the up the Madeira Canyon, these feeder places. I mean, it's just wild. It's a great place to rest. You can get in the shade, have your ice cream. And I mean to say, what a show. And it's not just the hummingbird feeders, there's huge seed feeders, acorn woodpeckers, these Mexican jays all over the place. It's great.
Elaine Regis is wondering, did you encounter many snakes?
That first trip, I actually, because I'd been to South Texas several times, I actually wore big snake boots, but I was so sorry I didn't. I ended up with sneakers on because my feet just got so overheated. And we never saw one. We weren't climbing up gnarly rocks where we're putting our hands where we're not going to see and stuff. You're out in open paths, and you can see where you're going. So, we did not see, I don't think we saw a single snake. In fact, we saw many more snakes in the High Island and Texas area, copperheads, and I almost stepped on one. And so I really didn't have that. Now, famous last words, someone's going to go and because of me, they're going to go get bit. But no, we did not see any snakes.
Thank you.
And someone asked about how far north do the birds you were seeing migrate? So are you expecting to see some of these further north in Arizona, or is that kind of the upper range for the species that you were encountering down there?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I was particularly highlighting were ones that were, that was where they were getting to. I mean, as a flyway, all of those, I mean, particularly like along the San Pedro and the Santa Cruz River, you just get huge numbers of migrating warblers that go up through there. They get almost every single warbler. And of course, they just head on their way. By the time you get to, April and May, a lot of those birds have gone, a lot of the birds that are going to go through have gone through. And, along these riparian areas, there's lots of Wilsons, there's Lincoln sparrows, there's lots of yellow warblers. So a lot of it is very familiar. I mean, there's that yellow-breasted chat, right? A lot of it's very familiar, but the ones I was trying to highlight were ones like that Trogon. It's not going to go farther north than the Santa Ritas. That's where it goes. So Don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think that got to her question. Jeff Bellin wanted to know if someone got all of the songs wrong, would there be a prize for that?
Sure. That his name, so he got the honorable mention.
That's right. I think there may have been a few of us in that category.
And don't you love that Parallaxia? It looks like a northern cardinal that's gotten in a fight in his cauliflower beak or something, right? What a great bird. I love that bird.
Laura De La Fleur is wondering, did you go owling? And if so, where?
Oh, no, we did. Absolutely. In fact, when we found our guides, we said, look, we're going, we know you want to do your little 8-hour day, but we want to be out early and we want to owl. And so, you know, we found elf owls, we found Mexican spotteds. We never got the full mated or whatever. But we had a really wonderful time owling. And what you do is, you know, you'll go to Ramsey, but you'll stop at the bottom and the gate will be there and you'll get out and you'll just sort of walk up and you'll find a parking lot at the bottom of Carr Canyon or something. You can't drive up, but you can walk in yeah, no, the owling is fabulous there.
Thank you.
Wow, just another reason to go, for sure.
Yeah, there's a Western Screech Owl that I don't know why I didn't include it in the thing, but there's one that's always in this wonderful knot at the San Pedro house, and the knot looks like a heart, and it just sits there all day long, and it's just a fabulous bird.
Oh, cool. Anything else from you, Constance?
I think Dana Duxbury Fox has her hand raised. Mark?
Dana. Hello, Dana.
Let's see if we can get her on.
Dana's my crow lady. The crows of Lawrence.
You got that right.
Jared, did you have to pull out your cell phone to follow any of the birds on this trip?
Now, so in what way pull it out?
Well, I remember being with you when you were calling out, go right, go left, go follow, go, and we were.
Well, there's no question that GPS was really useful there. But you know, you get on a road like the Box Canyon Road, there's only that road, or Ruby Road. I mean, Ruby Road just goes for miles out through all the Parajitos, and you couldn't possibly get lost. I mean, you could find yourself in some pretty tough situations because it is so remote. You got to bring water, and you got to be with someone else. But it's hard to, once you know you're on the right road, there aren't a whole lot of other roads to get on.
I just want to encourage everyone to pull up the American Birding Association's November Birding magazine, and you'll read about Jared's great facility with a cell phone in following birds.
That doesn't mean calling them out. That's not playing their songs.
No.
That's just GPS. That's GPS.
There's an article in there about the winter crow roosts of Lawrence, which of course
right.
in our ECOC area, and Jared is the featured person in the beginning of that article. Have you seen it, Jared?
We'll have to look for that.
Yeah, good. And really, anyone who wants any information about guides or our experience, and you want to get a hold of me offline, feel free to email me. Feel free to message me on my Facebook gallery, which is where I really focus most of my attention from a posting and whatever standpoint. So reach out. No, I'm happy to help if you have any questions.
Well, this has been fabulous. So grateful to you, Jared, for spending the evening with us, and so much care and attention was put into pulling together a wonderful presentation that people have really appreciated, including myself. So we will, Jared is one of our life members of ECOC, which we're very grateful to you for that as well. And we'll look forward to hearing about your upcoming adventures, and the birds of Taiwan sounds like a pretty interesting one to put on the list.
Great. Well, I'll start working. Look forward to seeing everyone out on the Essex County Bird Trail.
Great. Thanks again. And
Thank
we'll
you.
look forward to the members night on January 8th. Take care, everybody.
Fantastic. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.